It all started with a simple gesture, but it ended with a fall that no one could prevent. She only wanted to help, but she was treated as if she had broken the most important rules. What no one knew was that the scene was being watched by someone very powerful. If this beautiful story of overcoming obstacles and love interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you are watching us from. Continuing, Maya Sterling woke up that Thursday with the same heavy feeling as always. The alarm went off at 5 in the morning, and she spent a few seconds staring at the cracked ceiling of her bedroom, gathering the strength to face another day. Chicago was still asleep outside, but inside that small apartment on the south side, the routine was already pulling at her with urgency. She got up slowly, feeling the accumulated exhaustion of months that seemed never-ending, and walked to the bathroom quietly so as not to wake her mother, Mrs. Clara, who was sleeping in the next room. As she got ready in front of the foggy mirror, she observed her own face with a mixture of resignation and stubbornness. 32 years old, a few premature wrinkles around her eyes, brown hair tied in a simple bun, an expression that flickered between fatigue and determination. She wasn't the type of beauty that turned heads on the street, but there was a silent dignity in her, a steadiness in her dark eyes that revealed someone accustomed to fighting without complaining. Maya had learned early on that life didn't ask for permission to get tough, and the only way to survive was to keep moving, even when everything inside her screamed for rest. Her mother suffered from heart problems, and medications consumed a large portion of Maya's salary. The overdue rent was a constant, as were the electricity and water bills piling up on top of the old refrigerator. There were days when she went to work without breakfast, saving the little she had to ensure Mrs. Clara ate properly. Even so, Maya never let the hardness of life rob her of the ability to see others. It was a strange trait, almost old-fashioned in an increasingly hurried and indifferent world, but she refused to harden completely. She believed that a simple gesture, a kind word or an attentive look could make a difference even if no one noticed. The bus to work was crowded as usual. Maya squeezed in between strangers, clutching her bag to her chest, feeling the stifling heat and the smell of sweat mixed with cheap perfume. She closed her eyes during the commute, letting her mind wander between worries and small, impossible plans. Sometimes she dreamed of a different life, with a larger apartment, the possibility of taking her mother on a trip or buying a new outfit without guilt. But those thoughts never lasted long. Reality always returned far too quickly. Thompson's Fresh Market was located on Western Avenue, a large and busy unit with a wide parking lot and customers of all kinds. Maya had worked there for almost 6 years, always in the customer service department, resolving complaints, providing product information, and helping those who couldn't reach items on the high shelves. She earned little, but the job represented the only stability she knew. Losing it would mean plunging into an even deeper abyss. That morning, the rush started early. Carts rattled through the aisles, hurried customers checked lists, and employees restocked products with mechanical haste. Maya moved through the space attentively, greeting colleagues, helping whenever necessary, and maintaining a polite smile even when her patience was at its limit. It was around 10 o'clock when she noticed the presence of the girl. The child must have been 9 or 10 years old, thin, with light brown hair tied in a simple ponytail, wearing a faded t-shirt and frayed shorts. It wasn't exactly blatant poverty, but there was a simplicity about her that stood out in a place full of well-dressed, hurried people. The girl walked slowly between the shelves, looking at everything with a mix of curiosity and embarrassment, as if she wasn't sure she deserved to be there. Maya noticed that she barely touched anything, only observed, and that her eyes carried a wounded shyness, as if she were already used to being ignored or avoided. Some people passed her without looking. Others cast looks of discomfort, the kind that clearly said, "Stay away." One lady even clutched her purse tighter when the girl passed by. Maya felt her chest tighten at the sight. She knew that feeling all too well, being treated as if you didn't belong in certain places, carrying the weight of others' judgment on your shoulders. She decided to approach. The girl was standing in front of the bakery section, looking at the products with an expression that was hard to decipher. Maya approached carefully without rushing and spoke in a gentle tone. "Can I help you with something, sweetie?" The child looked up, startled at first, but soon realized there was neither suspicion nor impatience in that voice. She hesitated, bit her lower lip, and then said in a voice so thin it was almost inaudible, "I wanted to know if there's any cheaper bread. My grandmother asked, but I don't know which one to choose." Maya felt something stir inside her chest. It wasn't pity, it was recognition. She saw in that girl a reflection of herself, of the childhood where she also had to count pennies and choose what fit an impossible budget. Without a second thought, she knelt down to be at the child's eye level and began to explain patiently which options were the most affordable. But as they talked, she noticed the girl was holding only a few coins in her hand, clearly insufficient for anything there. The embarrassment in the child's eyes was painful to see. It was then that Maya made the decision that would change everything. Without fanfare, without expecting recognition, she took 2 loaves of bread, put them in a small bag, and said softly, "Today, these are on a special promotion. You can take them, don't worry." The girl's eyes widened in disbelief. "But I don't have enough money." Maya smiled, a genuine smile, and lightly touched her shoulder. "You don't need it. Take it to your grandmother and tell her there will be more promotions tomorrow, okay? You can come back whenever you need." The gratitude in the child's eyes was something no words could describe. She held the bag as if it were a treasure, whispered a thank you almost without a voice, and was about to leave when a deep, authoritative voice cut through the moment like a blade. "What is going on here?" Maya turned around and felt her stomach drop. Wallace Owens, the store manager, was standing a few feet away, arms crossed, with an expression that mixed anger and sadistic pleasure. He was a man in his 50s, with a protruding belly, a thin mustache, always dressed in a dress shirt that was too tight, and a posture that screamed fragile authority. He loved to humiliate people, especially those who couldn't defend themselves. Maya knew this. Everyone knew. Wallace took 2 long strides toward them, pointing his finger in Maya's face with calculated aggression. "Are you giving away products for free? Who authorized this? Who do you think you are to decide what to do with company merchandise?" His voice echoed through the aisle, attracting curious and embarrassed looks. Customers stopped to watch. Co-workers lowered their heads, pretending not to see. The girl backed away, frightened, and Maya tried to explain. "Mr. Owens, I only wanted to help. She's a child and—" He didn't let her finish. "Help? This isn't a charity house. You are here to work, not to play savior. You think you can just give things away because you feel sorry? You don't run anything here." The humiliation was public, intentional, designed to break any shred of dignity. Maya felt her cheeks burn and her hands shake, but she kept her voice steady. "I paid for it out of my own pocket, sir. I didn't take anything from the company." Wallace laughed with contempt. "Paid out of your pocket? So now you're the owner of the supermarket? You just violated internal policies, disobeyed the rules, and you still want to convince me you did a favor?" The girl was paralyzed, her eyes welling up, holding the bag of bread as if she wanted to disappear. Customers whispered among themselves, some with discomfort, others with morbid curiosity. Maya felt a mixture of anger, shame, and helplessness. Wallace grabbed Maya's arm with unnecessary force and pulled her toward the back. "Come with me now." She tried to pull away, but he squeezed harder. The girl was left behind, alone, with the bag in her hands and tears streaming down her face. Maya looked at her one last time before being dragged away and saw in those childish eyes a sadness that hurt more than any insult. In the back room, away from the prying eyes, Wallace released Maya's arm with a shove. She stumbled but didn't fall. He began to pace back and forth with rehearsed theatricality, as if he were judging a grave crime. "Do you know what your problem is, Maya? You think you're better than the others. You think you have the moral standing to do whatever you want. But here, you're just another employee I can replace whenever I want. And that is exactly what I'm going to do." Maya felt the floor vanish. "Are you firing me?" Her voice came out weak, incredulous. Wallace smiled, satisfied. "I am. You violated the rules, caused an embarrassment, and acted on your own. Pack your things and get out. I don't want you here another minute." She tried to argue, to explain, to plead, but he had already decided. For Wallace, it wasn't about rules. It was about power, about humiliating, about showing that no one could challenge him without consequences. Maya left that room dazed, her legs shaky and her heart racing. She passed through the employee area like a ghost, took her bag from her locker, ignored the pitying looks of her colleagues, and walked to the exit. No one said anything. No one did anything. The world kept turning as if nothing had happened. When she reached the street, the sunlight hit her face hard, but Maya didn't feel the warmth. She felt only a cold void, the sensation that she had been punished exactly for doing what was right. The humiliation burned deeper than the financial worry. How would she explain this to her mother? How would she pay the bills? How would she survive without that meager salary that was all she had? Maya walked to the bus stop with her eyes fixed on the ground, trying to hold back the tears. People passed by hurriedly around her. No one noticed her. She sat on the cold concrete bench and leaned her head against the glass of the stop. For a moment, she allowed herself to cry in silence away from any witnesses. The tears fell slowly, carrying anger, sadness, and injustice. But deep down, even amidst the pain, there was a stubborn certainty that wouldn't fade. If she could go back in time, she would help that girl again. She would do everything exactly the same. Because there were things that had no price, and one of them was being able to look in the mirror and recognize her own humanity intact. The bus arrived, and Maya boarded with a heavy body and a broken heart. She didn't know that this was only the beginning. She couldn't imagine that same afternoon, far from there, a conversation would change everything, and that the humiliation she felt at that moment would turn into the most improbable turning point of her life. The apartment door closed behind Maya with a dry sound that echoed through the empty hallway. She leaned her back against the wood and stood there, clutching her bag to her chest, trying to gather the courage to go in and face her mother. Mrs. Clara was in the living room, sitting in the worn armchair watching the 11 o'clock soap opera with the volume low. When she heard her daughter arrive earlier than usual, she looked up with curiosity and concern. "Maya, what is it? Shouldn't you be at work?" Her mother's fragile voice carried that tired tenderness of someone who had suffered too much in life. Maya tried to smile, but the effort was so fake that Mrs. Clara stood up slowly, supporting herself on the arms of the chair, and walked over to her daughter. "What happened, my child? Talk to me." It was only at that moment that Maya collapsed. The tears she had held back on the bus, on the street, in front of strangers, finally fell uncontrollably. She let herself be embraced by her mother, smelling the cheap soap and the affection that only a mother knows. Mrs. Clara didn't ask questions. She just held her daughter tightly, stroking her hair, waiting for her to calm down enough to speak. When she finally managed to tell what had happened, Maya saw sadness and outrage mix on her mother's wrinkled face. Mrs. Clara pressed her lips together, shook her head, and said in a firm voice, "You did the right thing, Maya. No matter what that man said. You did what was right." But Maya couldn't feel relief. Doing the right thing didn't pay the rent. Doing the right thing didn't buy medicine. Doing the right thing didn't put food on the table. That afternoon, Maya tried to distract her mind by cooking, cleaning the house, and organizing drawers that were already organized. Anything to avoid thinking about tomorrow, next week, or the months to come. Mrs. Clara tried to cheer her up with words of hope, but they both knew the situation was grave. The saved money would barely last 2 weeks, and after that, the abyss. Night fell heavily over Chicago. Maya lay in bed, but sleep wouldn't come. She stared at the ceiling, replaying every detail of the morning, thinking about how everything had crumbled so fast. The image of the frightened girl wouldn't leave her head. Had she made it home? Was her grandmother angry that she returned without the bread? Maya knew these questions had no answers, but they spun in her mind like a scratched record. What she didn't know was that same night, a few miles away in an elegant mansion in Lincoln Park, a very different conversation was taking place. Robert Thompson was sitting in his spacious living room, a glass of wine in hand, listening intently to his granddaughter Lily tell him everything she had experienced that morning. The girl, now dressed in comfortable, clean clothes, spoke with a seriousness that didn't match her 10 years. She described every detail, how people looked at her with discomfort, how some moved away, how a lady clutched her purse in fear as if she were a threat. But in the middle of all that, Lily spoke of Maya with an emotion that left her grandfather silent. She was the only one who treated me like a person, Grandpa. She really looked at me, you know. She didn't pretend I was invisible. And when I said I didn't have money, she didn't judge me. She helped me without making it feel like charity. Lily paused, her eyes shining with unshed tears. But then that horrible man came screaming. He humiliated her in front of everyone. It was so unfair, Grandpa. Robert Thompson was a 63-year-old man with well-cut grey hair, an elegant bearing, firm hands and a piercing gaze. He had built the supermarket chain from scratch, facing crises, competitors and challenges of all kinds. He knew how to deal with numbers, strategies and negotiations, but at that moment, seeing his granddaughter upset, he felt a deep and controlled anger. The anger of someone who realizes something is rotten inside his own house. The idea for the test had been his. In recent months, Robert had been receiving signs that something was wrong in some of the units. Reports showed acceptable numbers, but there was a strange employee turnover, veiled complaints, and a heavy atmosphere that didn't appear on the spreadsheets. He suspected that some managers were abusing their power, creating toxic environments, and stepping on those who couldn't defend themselves. But he needed concrete proof, not just suspicions. That was how the idea to use Lily came about. The girl, daughter of his eldest son, was smart and brave. Robert explained that she would visit some units dressed simply, without drawing attention, and ask for small favors. The goal was to observe how employees reacted to someone who seemed to have no status, money, or influence. Lily agreed without hesitation, but no one predicted the experience would affect her so much. Robert picked up the phone and called Daniel Miller, the director of human resources, and one of the few men he trusted completely in the company. Daniel answered on the second ring. "Mr. Thompson, good evening." The voice was polite, attentive, and slightly concerned. Robert got straight to the point. "Daniel, I need you to come here early tomorrow. We have a serious situation. I'm going to need all the records from the Western Avenue unit, including security footage and employee history. And I want you to organize a visit to the unit, in person." Daniel didn't ask unnecessary questions. He knew that when Robert spoke in that tone, something serious was happening. "I'll be there at 7 in the morning, sir. You can count on me." The call was brief but efficient. Robert hung up and looked at his granddaughter, who was now curled up on the sofa hugging a cushion. He approached, sat beside her, and said in a firm but gentle voice, "Lily, you did an important job today, and I'm going to ensure that the person who treated you well isn't punished for it. I promise you that." Lily looked up, hopeful. "Are you going to help her, Grandpa?" Robert nodded. "I'm going to do more than that. I'm going to correct an injustice." The next morning, Maya woke up without any energy. She had nowhere to go, no appointments, no routine to follow. The feeling of uselessness was suffocating. She prepared coffee for her mother and tried to eat something, but the food wouldn't go down. She was sitting in the small living room, staring at the television without really seeing anything, when they heard the doorbell ring. Mrs. Clara went to answer it and came back with a confused expression. "Maya, there's a man at the door saying he came to pick you up. He says he's from the company." Maya felt her heart race. From the company? What company? She stood up slowly, her legs shaky, and walked to the door. Outside, a man in a dark suit was waiting with a respectful posture. "Good morning, Ms. Maya Sterling?" She nodded, suspicious. "That's me." The man smiled politely. "My name is Charles. I am Mr. Robert Thompson's driver. He asked me to take you to the company headquarters. There is an important matter to discuss." Maya froze. Robert Thompson, the owner of the chain. Why would he want to talk to her? Had Wallace made up some even more serious accusation? Was she going to be sued for something? Panic began to rise, but she tried to keep her voice steady. "Can I know what this is about?" Charles shook his head. "I'm sorry, Mum, but I was only told it is urgent and important. Mr. Thompson is waiting." Mrs. Clara appeared behind Maya, holding her daughter's arm with protective strength. "Does she really have to go?" The driver maintained his respectful tone. "It's a request, not an order, Mum, but I believe it would be in her interest to attend." Maya looked at her mother, saw the concern etched on her wrinkled face, and made a decision. "I'll go. I need to know what's happening." The trip to headquarters was tense. Maya sat in the back of the comfortable car, watching the city pass through the window, trying to control her breathing. Charles didn't ask questions, didn't try to make conversation. He just drove attentively, respecting her silence. When they arrived at the elegant building in downtown Chicago, Maya felt her stomach churn. The place was intimidating, full of glass, steel, and well-dressed people. She, in her simple clothes and with her nerves on edge, felt completely out of place. She was led to a meeting room on the 10th floor. The door opened, and Maya entered with her heart jumping. Inside, 3 people were waiting for her. The first one she recognized was the girl. Lily was sitting in a chair, now dressed in beautiful clothes, her hair loose and well-brushed, a calm posture that contrasted completely with the shy child from the supermarket. Maya blinked, confused, trying to understand. Beside Lily was an older man of imposing presence, who stood up as soon as Maya entered. Robert Thompson extended his hand firmly, but without arrogance. "Ms. Maya Sterling, thank you for coming. Please, sit down." She shook his hand mechanically, still processing the fact that the girl was there, well-dressed, smiling shyly at her. And then Maya noticed the third man. He was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, observing everything in silence. Daniel Miller was about 36 years old, of medium height, broad-shouldered, with well-cut dark hair, a clean-shaven face, an impeccable grey suit, and brown eyes that seemed to see beneath the surface. When their eyes met, Maya felt something strange, a subtle electric current passing between them. He didn't look away immediately. He stood there, studying her with an intensity that left her uncomfortable, and at the same time strangely seen. Robert asked Maya to sit, and she obeyed with her legs trembling. "I know you must be confused, and I will explain everything. But first, I want you to know that you are not here because you did something wrong. Quite the opposite." Maya couldn't speak. She just waited, her heart beating so hard she was sure everyone in the room could hear it. It was then that Robert began to tell the truth. He explained about the test, how Lily had been instructed to visit several units to observe the behavior of the employees. He said the goal was to identify toxic environments, abusive leadership, and people who had forgotten that working with the public was above all working with humanity. And then he looked directly into Maya's eyes and said with a sincerity that cut deep, "You were the only person in 4 different units who treated my granddaughter with genuine respect. The only one who saw a child, not a nuisance." Maya felt tears rising, but she fought to hold them back. Lily leaned forward and said in a sweet voice, "You were very kind to me, and I'm so sorry for what that man did." Robert continued, now in a harder tone. "The manager, Wallace Owens, will be removed immediately. We are investigating other cases of abuse of authority at that unit, and everything indicates his behavior is the pattern, not the exception. But I didn't bring you here just to tell you that." Daniel finally moved, pushing off the wall and approaching the table. His voice was deep, controlled, but carried something Maya couldn't name. "You are going to be reinstated, obviously, but not as a regular employee. We want you to take over the management of the Western Avenue unit." Maya's eyes widened. "What? No, I don't have experience. I've never—" Robert raised his hand, interrupting her gently. "You have something more important than experience. You have character. You have empathy. You have the ability to lead by example, not by fear, and we are going to give you all the support you need. Daniel will oversee the transition closely, ensuring you have the tools and training to take on the role." Maya looked at Daniel, who held her gaze with a firmness that mixed professionalism and something more. He nodded slightly, as if making a silent promise. "I'll be by your side at every step. You won't be alone." And it was in that moment, in that impersonal and cold room, that Maya Sterling felt for the first time in years that perhaps life wasn't just about surviving. Perhaps there was room for something more, something bigger, something she couldn't even name yet. Maya didn't sleep that night. She stayed awake late, replaying every word spoken in that meeting room, trying to process the absurd turnaround her life had taken in less than 48 hours. Manager. She, Maya Sterling, who could barely pay the rent, who had never held a leadership position, who had always been just another invisible gear in the machine. And now they wanted her to take command of the same unit where she had been publicly humiliated. The fear was real. Maya knew that many employees saw her being dragged away by Wallace, saw the humiliation, saw her leave with her head down. How was she going to look at those people now? How was she going to gain respect after being treated like trash? And even more importantly, how was she going to deal with Wallace? Robert Thompson had guaranteed that the manager would be removed, but Maya couldn't imagine how that would happen without a painful confrontation. Mrs. Clara noticed her daughter's restlessness and sat beside her on the bed, holding her hand tenderly. "My child, you were born for this. You might not believe it now, but I always knew you were made of different material. Strong, just. And the time has come to show that to the world." Maya squeezed her mother's hand, feeling the weight of those words. She wanted to believe, but insecurity was like a creature gnawing inside her. On the morning agreed for her return, Daniel Miller came to pick her up personally. When Maya opened the door and saw him there, standing in an impeccable navy blue suit with that serious but gentle look, she felt her stomach tie in a knot. He smiled slightly, noticing her nervousness. "Good morning, Maya. Ready?" She took a deep breath and nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be." During the drive, Daniel tried to make her more comfortable. He explained what the process would be like, guaranteed she would have all the support necessary, and made it clear that he would be present the whole time. "I know it's scary, but you need to trust yourself. What you did for that child wasn't weakness, it was leadership. True leadership." Maya looked at him, and for the first time she allowed herself to really observe him. There was something about that man that intrigued her. It wasn't just his appearance, but the way he spoke, how he looked at her, how he seemed to genuinely believe in her when she didn't even believe in herself. When they arrived at Thompson's Fresh Market, Maya felt a tightness in her chest. The parking lot was full, the rush already intense. Daniel parked the car and turned to her. "Breathe. You are not alone." He got out first and opened the door for Maya, a gentle gesture that caught her by surprise. Together they walked toward the entrance. As soon as they entered, the atmosphere changed. Employees restocking merchandise stopped what they were doing and looked. Customers noticed that something different was happening. Maya felt the eyes glued to her, but she kept her head held high, following Daniel down the main aisle. He walked with natural authority, without haste, without arrogance, just firm. Wallace Owens was near the checkout, talking to an employee about a customer complaint. When he saw Daniel Miller approaching, his face changed. He knew the director. He knew his presence. There was no coincidence. But when he saw Maya beside him, Wallace's expression went from surprise to contained rage. What is going on here?" His voice tried to maintain a tone of authority, but there was a perceptible crack. Daniel stopped a few steps from Wallace and spoke with a cutting calmness. "Mr. Wallace Owens, I'm going to need you to gather the whole team now, all available employees. This is a directive from the board." Wallace blinked, confused and defensive. "But we are in a busy hour. I can't just stop everything." Daniel didn't change his tone. "It's not a request, Mr. Owens. It's an order. Gather the team, now." The tension in the air was palpable. Wallace looked around, noticing that other employees were already approaching, curious. He tried to regain control, but it was clear something had changed. With the abrupt gesture, he called the supervisors and gave the order. In a few minutes, the team was gathered near the customer service area. About 20 employees, some nervous, others curious, all in silence. It was then that Robert Thompson entered through the main door. His presence was unmistakable, tall, elegant, with a bearing that commanded respect effortlessly. Wallace's eyes widened. "Mr. Thompson, I didn't know you were coming today. I can—" Robert raised his hand, interrupting him. "Just listen, Wallace." Robert walked to the center of the group and began to speak in a firm but controlled voice. "Good morning, everyone. I know this meeting is unexpected, but it is necessary. In recent months, I received several signs that something was not right in this unit. High turnover, veiled complaints, an atmosphere of fear. I decided to investigate, and what I discovered was deeply disappointing." He paused, letting the words land. "I performed a simple test. I sent a child to this unit to ask for help. An ordinary child, dressed modestly, with no sign of status. The goal was to observe how you, my employees, would treat someone who seemed to have no importance." Robert looked around, seeing some faces redden. Most of you ignored the child. Some avoided her with discomfort, But one person, only one, treated her with dignity. He turned to Maya, who was standing beside Daniel, trying to maintain her composure. "Maya Sterling not only helped my granddaughter, she did so without expecting recognition, without fanfare, with a genuine humanity that should be the standard in this company." And what happened to her? Robert was now looking directly at Wallace. She was publicly humiliated, dragged away, fired, for doing exactly what I would expect from any leader in this organization. Wallace turned pale. "Mr. Thompson, I was just following the rules. She gave away merchandise without authorization." Robert took a step toward him. "She paid for it out of her own pocket. You knew that and chose to punish her anyway. But that's not all. In the last few days, I've spoken with several employees from this unit. I heard reports of abuse, humiliation, screaming, threats, a consistent pattern of toxic leadership, all coming from you." The silence was deafening. Wallace tried to defend himself. "That's a lie. Who said that? These are resentful employees trying to hurt me." Robert was unmoved. "I have security footage, Wallace. I have customer reports. I have documentation of unjustified dismissals. You turned this place into an environment of fear, where people are more afraid of you than they are willing to work well." Wallace was visibly desperate now, his face red, his hands shaking. He looked around for support, but no one spoke in his defense. Some employees even lowered their heads, as if relieved that someone had finally told the truth. Daniel stepped forward and handed an envelope to Wallace. "You are removed from the position, effective immediately. You will have to answer for violations of the company's internal policies. An investigation will be launched to evaluate all your conduct. You may collect your belongings and leave the unit now." Wallace held the envelope with trembling hands, the reality falling on him like a crushing weight. He tried one last card, looking at Robert with desperation. "Mr. Thompson, I worked for years in this company. Robert cut him off coldly. "And you used those years to abuse those who couldn't defend themselves. That isn't leadership, Wallace. It's cowardice. Now please leave." Wallace looked around one last time, saw only silence and looks of disapproval, and finally understood that he had lost. With slumped shoulders and a broken face, he walked to the back to get his belongings, accompanied by a security guard. His exit was as silent as it was pathetic. No one said goodbye. No one said anything. It was as if he had never truly mattered. When Wallace left, Robert turned to the team. "I know many of you suffered under his management, and I apologize for not realizing it sooner, but that changes now. Starting today, this unit will have a new leadership, a leadership based on respect, empathy, and competence." He signaled to Maya, who approached with shaky legs. "I present to you the new manager of this unit, Maya Sterling." All eyes turned to her. Maya saw surprise, curiosity, and on some faces something that looked like hope. She took a deep breath and spoke, her voice coming out firmer than she expected. "I know many of you saw me being humiliated here. I know you must be wondering how I'm going to lead after that. The truth is, I'm wondering too, but I'm going to try to do something different. I'm going to try to build a place where no one needs to be afraid of doing what is right." She looked around, seeing attentive faces. "I'm not going to pretend I know everything. I'm going to make mistakes, but I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to respect you. And I'm going to work alongside you, not above you." There was a brief silence, and then an employee in the back began to applaud. Slowly, others joined in. It wasn't a thunderous ovation, but it was genuine. It was recognition. It was relief. Daniel observed everything with an expression that mixed pride and something deeper. When Maya looked at him, she saw in his eyes an admiration that made her blush. There was something happening there, something that went beyond professional, but neither of them was ready to name it. Robert concluded the meeting with practical instructions and left, leaving Daniel to accompany Maya through the transition. The rest of the day was a blur of information, processes, and introductions. Maya was taken to the office that once belonged to Wallace, now cleaned and reorganized. Daniel stayed by her side the whole time, explaining systems, presenting reports, ensuring she didn't feel lost. At the end of the afternoon, when the employees began to leave, Maya was exhausted but strangely energized. She sat in the manager's chair, still not fully believing this was real. Daniel leaned against the desk, looking at her with that half-smile that was becoming familiar. "You did well today, very well." Maya smiled, tired. "I was dying of fear." He shook his head. "It didn't look like it. You looked confident, strong. Exactly what this team needed to see." There was a comfortable silence between them. Maya realized she was looking at Daniel for too long and looked away, pretending to organize papers on the desk. He noticed, but didn't comment. He just said softly, "I'll be here whenever you need. You can count on me." And something in the way he said it made Maya's heart beat faster. When she finally went home that night, Maya looked through the bus window and allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. For the first time in years, the future didn't seem like just a sequence of overdue bills and hard days. It seemed like a possibility, a promise, a chance to be more than just someone who survives. Hand in some corner of her chest, guarded with care, there was also a prickle of something new, something dangerous, something that looked very much like the beginning of a feeling she wasn't ready to admit. But it was there, growing in silence, like a seed planted in fertile soil, just waiting for the right moment to bloom. The first few weeks as a manager were an emotional roller coaster for Maya. She woke up every day with a mix of excitement and panic, not knowing which of the two she would feel more strongly throughout the day. There were moments when she felt capable, confident, as if she were finally in the right place. And there were others when insecurity hit hard, making her question every decision, every word, every gesture. Daniel kept his promise. He was present almost every day, attending meetings, helping Maya understand inventory spreadsheets, explaining internal policies, and mediating difficult conversations with more resistant employees. But his presence went beyond professional support. There was something in the way he looked at her, how he chose his words, how he stayed longer than strictly necessary, that left Maya restless in a way she couldn't name. One of the first challenges was gaining the team's trust. Many employees, especially the older ones, viewed Maya with suspicion. She was one of them, had held the same position for years, and now she was on the other side, making decisions that affected everyone's lives. Some thought she would change, that the power would transform her into another version of Wallace. Others just waited to see if she would truly be different. Maya decided to prove it through actions, not words. She instituted weekly open meetings where any employee could bring concerns, suggestions, or complaints. At first, people spoke little, still testing how far they could go. But gradually, when they realized Maya really listened, that she took notes, that she took action, the conversations became more honest. There was one case that stood out. Jessica, a 23-year-old woman who worked at the checkout, came to one of these meetings with red eyes. Maya noticed and waited until the end to speak with her in private. Jessica hesitated, but finally broke down. She said she was being verbally harassed by a regular customer, that the man always chose her line to make inappropriate comments, and that she was afraid to complain because she thought she would be blamed for it. Maya felt anger rise, but she kept her voice calm. "You are not to blame at all, Jessica, and you won't have to go through that again. I'll handle it." The next day, when the customer appeared and went straight to Jessica's line, Maya was waiting. She positioned herself beside the young woman and, as soon as the man opened his mouth to make an improper comment, Maya interrupted him firmly. "Sir, I need to speak with you in private, now." She led him to the administrative area and made it clear without shouting or threatening, but with a cutting coldness, that such behavior would not be tolerated. The man tried to laugh it off, minimize it, say it was just a joke. Maya didn't flinch. It isn't a joke when the other person feels uncomfortable. The lady works here and deserves respect. If you cannot demonstrate basic respect, you will have to shop elsewhere. The man left huffing, but he never returned. Jessica hugged Maya with tears of gratitude, and the news spread through the team. Maya wasn't just a boss. She was someone who protected her own. Daniel witnessed that scene from afar. He was talking to a supervisor when he saw Maya lead the customer away and decided to stay close in case she needed support. But she didn't. She handled the situation with a mixture of firmness and control that impressed him deeply. When Maya returned to the work area, Daniel intercepted her in the hallway. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" They went into the manager's office and he closed the door. "Maya, The way you handled that, it was perfect. Firm but without aggression. Protective but professional. Maya shrugged, still processing the adrenaline. I just did what was right. No one deserves to be treated that way. Daniel took a step closer, and Maya felt her heart race. He was too close, and the air between them seemed charged. You have a natural talent for this, you know, for making people feel seen, protected. It's rare. His eyes were fixed on hers, and Maya found herself unable to look away. There was a tension there, dense, almost palpable. Daniel seemed about to say something more, but then he looked away and took a step back, creating space. I'm sorry, I was invading your space. Maya shook her head, trying to reorganize her thoughts. No, it's fine. Thank you. For the support. Always. He smiled, that discreet smile she was beginning to recognize, and left the room before either of them said something that couldn't be undone. Maya stood there, her heart racing, trying to understand what on earth was happening to her. As the days passed, the closeness between them grew in subtle but undeniable ways. Meetings that were supposed to last half an hour stretched to an hour because they started talking about things that went beyond work. Maya discovered that Daniel had lost his father young, that he grew up helping his mother support the house, and that he chose to study business at night while working during the day. Stories that resonated deeply with hers. He discovered that she loved to read but didn't have money to buy books, and spent hours at the public library on weekends. That she dreamed of traveling but had never left the state of Illinois. That she had a sharp sense of humor, hidden under all that seriousness. The conversations became the highlight of both their days. Sometimes, Daniel made up excuses to show up at the unit when it wasn't strictly necessary. Maya did the same, calling him for issues she could have resolved on her own, just to hear his voice on the other end of the line. It was a dangerous game because neither of them was admitting what was really happening. There was one night when Daniel stayed late helping Maya finish quarterly reports. The supermarket was already empty, just the two of them in the room lit by a dim lamp. Maya was tired, rubbed her face, and let out a heavy sigh. Daniel looked up from the computer. Tired, she nodded. Exhausted, but in a good way, you know. For the first time in a long time, I'm tired from doing something that matters. Daniel leaned back in his chair, observing her with that attention that left her exposed. You changed this place, Maya. In a few weeks, you completely changed the atmosphere. People smile more. They work with more drive. You did that. Maya blushed, looking away. I didn't do it alone. You were here the whole time. He shook his head slowly. I helped with processes, with paperwork. But the real change came from you, from your way of leading, of being. She looked at him again, and this time she didn't look away. Daniel, I don't know what I would have done without you, truly. You gave me a confidence I didn't know I had. He was silent for a few seconds, and then said, his voice low, almost husky, You always had it, Maya. I just helped you see it. The silence that followed was different. It wasn't uncomfortable, but charged with something neither of them knew how to handle. Daniel stood up, walked to the window, turning his back to her, as if he needed distance to think. Maya stayed where she was, observing the line of his shoulders, the tension in his posture. I need to tell you something, he said finally, still with his back turned. Maya felt her stomach tighten. What? He turned around, and in his eyes there was something she had never seen before. Vulnerability, hesitation. I shouldn't be feeling what I'm feeling. It's not professional, it's not appropriate, and I know it can complicate everything, but I can't pretend it isn't happening anymore. Maya stopped breathing. Her heart beat so hard it felt like it would burst out of her chest. Daniel took a step toward her. I fell in love with you, Maya. It wasn't all at once. It was watching you fight, grow, transform. It was listening to you talk, seeing you take care of people, realizing that you are the most genuine person I've ever met. I tried to ignore it. I swear I tried. But I can't anymore. Her words failed. Maya opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Daniel continued, his voice firm but loaded with emotion. I understand if this is too much. I understand if you don't feel the same. But I couldn't keep pretending it was just work, just friendship. You deserve to know the truth. Maya stood up slowly, her legs shaking. She walked to him, stopping just inches away. Daniel watched her with an intensity that burned her inside. "Me too," she said, her voice coming out almost in a whisper. "I'm feeling it too. And it's scaring me because it's been a long time since I felt anything like this. It's been a long time since I trusted anyone like this." He raised his hand, hesitant, and lightly touched her face, his fingers grazing her jawline. Maya closed her eyes at the touch, feeling a shiver run through her whole body. "You can trust me," Daniel murmured. "I won't hurt you. I won't use you. I won't disappear. I'm here because I want to be. Because you make me want to be better." Maya opened her eyes, and they were so close she could feel his breath. "I don't know how to do this, Daniel. I don't know how to separate the professional from the personal. I don't know if I'm ready." He smiled, a sad but understanding smile. "I don't know either, but we can figure it out together. No rush, in our own time." It was Maya who closed the distance. She leaned in, and their lips met in a soft kiss, hesitant at first, but which soon deepened with an urgency that caught them both by surprise. It was as if everything they had held back for weeks finally exploded all at once. Daniel pulled her closer, his hands firm on her waist, and Maya allowed herself to melt into that embrace, feeling for the first time in years that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. When they separated, both were breathless, foreheads touching, eyes closed, just feeling. "Maya," Daniel whispered, and she had never heard her own name spoken that way, as if it were a promise, as if it were a beginning. They stayed there longer than they should have, just holding each other in silence, knowing they had crossed a line that could not be undone. And both knew that from then on, nothing would be simple. There would be challenges, judgments, complications. But at that moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was the warmth of the embrace, the certainty that they were not alone, and the silent promise that, whatever happened, they would face it together. When they finally left the supermarket that night, Maya looked up at the starry Chicago sky and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Happiness. Pure, simple, scary. And beside her, holding her hand with a tenderness that made her want to cry, was a man who truly saw her, who chose her, who loved her. And for the first time, Maya allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved this, that she deserved to be happy, that she deserved to be loved. The following days were a mixture of ecstasy and guilt for Maya. She woke up thinking of Daniel, went to sleep with the memory of the kiss still burning on her lips, and spent the hours of the day trying to balance the role of manager with the feelings that grew stronger and stronger. They tried to maintain discretion, but it was hard to hide the way they looked at each other, the way they found excuses to be alone, the tension that filled the air whenever they were in the same environment. It was Jessica who noticed first. One morning, while Maya was reviewing the shift schedule, the young woman approached with a mischievous smile. "Can I ask you something?" Maya looked up, suspicious. "Sure." Jessica leaned in, lowering her voice. "There's something between you and Daniel, right?" Maya felt her face burn. "What? No, The employee laughed softly. "Relax, boss. Your secret is safe with me. But everyone has already noticed the way you two look at each other. It's beautiful, really." Maya froze. If Jessica had noticed, others had too, and that could become a serious problem. That same afternoon, when Daniel showed up for a follow-up meeting, Maya pulled him into the private office and told him what had happened. He rubbed his face, visibly concerned. "I knew this could happen, but I didn't think it would be this fast." Maya crossed her arms, defensive. "And now? What do we do?" Daniel looked at her seriously. "We have two options. Either we hide it and run the risk of it being worse when they find out anyway, or we own it and deal with the consequences head-on." Maya felt her stomach churn. "Owning it means people will question my ability. They'll say I got this position because I'm with you. They'll think I'm an opportunist." He took a step toward her, taking her hands. "Anyone who thinks that doesn't know you. And anyone who knows you knows exactly what kind of person you are." Maya wanted to believe, but insecurity was stronger. "I built this from scratch, Daniel. I earned respect bit by bit. If people think it's just because of a relationship, everything I've done loses value." Daniel squeezed her hands gently. "Nothing you've done loses value. Your results speak for you. The transformation of this unit speaks for you, but I understand the fear, and I will respect whatever you decide." Maya took a deep breath. "Let's wait a little longer, until things stabilize more." Daniel nodded, but there was a subtle sadness in his eyes. "All right, we wait." They separated before anyone entered, but the conversation left a weight in the air. The following weeks were tense. Maya plunged into work with an intensity that bordered on obsession. She implemented new quality control systems, created incentive programs for employees, and established partnerships with local suppliers. The results were undeniable. The Western Avenue unit was among the top 3 best evaluated in the chain, both in sales and in customer satisfaction and organizational climate. Robert Thompson made a point of congratulating her personally in a quarterly meeting with all the managers. But professional success didn't erase the emotional void. Maya and Daniel continued to see each other, but always hidden, always in a hurry, always afraid of being caught. The encounters were stolen, full of urgency and frustration. They kissed in dark corners of the parking lot, exchanged text messages after midnight, and dreamed of a future where they wouldn't have to hide. It was on one of those nights that everything exploded. Maya was in the apartment with her mother when she received a call from Jessica. The employee was nervous, speaking fast. "Maya, you need to know something. There's a new employee, Carly, who's spreading around that you got the job because you're having an affair with Daniel. She's telling everyone, saying she saw you two kissing in the parking lot." Maya felt the floor disappear. Carly was a woman in her 40s, transferred from another unit a few weeks ago. From the beginning, she had shown veiled hostility, questioning Maya's decisions, making biting comments, and creating an atmosphere of tension. Maya had tried to talk, to understand what was behind that attitude, but Carly remained closed off. And now this. Daniel came to Maya's apartment as soon as she called. He found her visibly shaken, pacing back and forth in the small living room while Mrs. Clara watched with concern. "Maya, we knew this could happen," Daniel said, trying to calm her. She turned to him, her eyes shining with anger and fear. Knew I was going to be called an opportunist, that everything I built was going to be reduced to an affair." Daniel tried to approach, but she backed away. "Maya, you know it isn't like that. I know, Robert knows, your team knows." She shook her head, tears starting to fall. "But Carly doesn't know, and she's going to plant that in other people's heads, and the more people believe it, the harder it will be to prove the opposite." Mrs. Clara stood up slowly and touched her daughter's shoulder. "Maya, you've already proven your value. Don't let a piece of gossip destroy what you built." But Maya was exhausted of fighting, of proving herself, of carrying the weight of everything alone. "I don't know if I can do this, Mum. I don't know if I can handle another battle." Daniel stepped forward, his voice firm. "Then don't fight alone. Let me take this on with you publicly. Let's go to the company tomorrow and tell Robert. Let's make it clear that we are together, but that it has nothing to do with your work." Maya looked at him, torn. "And if this makes everything worse, if they remove me from the position?" Daniel held her face with both hands, forcing her to look into his eyes. "If they remove you, we'll fight it. Together. But hiding isn't working, Maya. It's just destroying you inside, and I can't stand to see you suffer like this anymore." The next day, Maya requested a meeting with Robert Thompson. She arrived at headquarters with Daniel by her side, both tense but decided. Robert received them in his private office, immediately realizing something serious was happening. "Mr. Thompson, I need to be honest with you about something," Maya began, her voice trembling slightly. The businessman leaned back in his chair, attentive. "I'm listening." Maya took a deep breath. "Daniel and I are in a relationship. It started a few weeks ago after I took over the management. I know this might seem inappropriate, but I want to make it clear that my work has never been influenced by it. Everything I've achieved was on my own merit. But there's an employee spreading rumors, and I didn't want you to find out through gossip." Robert was silent for a few seconds, processing the information. Then he looked at Daniel. "Is it true?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, sir, and I take full responsibility. I should have communicated it sooner, but we didn't want it to interfere with Maya's work." Robert interlaced his fingers, thoughtful. You think I didn't know? Maya's eyes widened. How? Robert smiled slightly. I have eyes all over the company, Maya. And even if I didn't, it would be impossible not to notice the way you two look at each other. But you know what I also noticed? That it hasn't changed your performance at all. Daniel continues to be one of the best directors I've ever had, and you transformed a problematic unit into the best in the chain. So frankly, what you do outside of office hours is none of my business. Maya felt tears rise, this time from relief, but he continued, now in a more serious tone. However, if this becomes a problem, if it affects the work environment or creates conflicts of interest, I'll have to intervene. And as for this employee who's spreading rumors, what's her name? Maya hesitated. Carly. Robert picked up the phone and dialed an extension. I need to speak with the HR manager. Now, in less than an hour, Carly was called into a meeting. Robert made it clear that rumors and gossip would not be tolerated, that if she had a problem with Maya's leadership, she should bring it up professionally, not through rumors. Carly tried to defend herself, but there was no argument that sustained her behavior. She was formally warned, and everyone in the unit was informed that defamation would result in dismissal. When Maya and Daniel left headquarters, the weight they were carrying had diminished considerably. In the car, Daniel held her hand and said softly, "We are in this together. In everything." Maya squeezed his hand back, finally allowing herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, it would work out. But that night, alone in her room, Maya looked at the ceiling and felt a pang of fear. Fear that everything was too good to be true. Fear that something could still go wrong. Fear that happiness wasn't meant for people like her. She didn't know that the next challenge would test not only the relationship but everything she had built, and that the true test of strength was still to come. 6 months passed since Maya took over the management. The Chicago winter arrived gently, with that dry cold that called for a light coat and hot coffee. Maya was in the manager's office reviewing proposals for the end-of-year project when Robert Thompson showed up unannounced. She stood up immediately, surprised. "Mr. Thompson, I didn't know you were coming today," he smiled, gesturing for her to sit. "I came because I have a proposal for you, Maya." She sat down slowly, her heart racing. Robert pulled up a chair and sat on the other side of the desk, with a relaxed posture that contrasted with the seriousness of his gaze. "You know the chain is growing. We are opening 3 new units in the coming months, and we need someone to coordinate the implementation of the humanized management model you developed here. Someone who can train the new managers, establish guidelines, and ensure that what worked here is replicated in other places." Maya blinked, confused. "You want me to train other people?" Robert shook his head. "I want you to take over as the regional coordinator of people management. It's a new position, created specifically with what you built here in mind. You would still be linked to this unit, but you would have the autonomy to implement changes throughout the entire chain. It's a promotion, Maya. A big promotion." The room seemed to spin. Maya opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Robert continued. "I know it's a lot. I know you've barely had time to get used to being a manager, but you've proven that you have vision, leadership, and above all, humanity. Those 3 things together are rare, and I don't want to waste that potential in a single unit. I want you to transform the entire company." Maya felt tears rise, but this time they weren't from fear or insecurity. They were from gratitude, from recognition, from an emotion so intense it didn't fit inside her chest. "I don't know what to say, Mr. Thompson." He smiled, standing up. "Say you accept. We'll build the rest together." Maya also stood up, extending her hand, but Robert surprised her by pulling her into a paternal hug. "You deserve this, Maya. Never doubt that." When he left, Maya stood there trying to process everything. She picked up her phone and called Daniel, who answered on the second ring. "Can you come here? Now. I need to tell you something." He noticed the urgency in her voice. "I'm on my way." 20 minutes later, Daniel entered the room and found Maya pacing back and forth, visibly agitated. What happened? She stopped, looked at him, and told him everything. Daniel listened in silence, and when she finished, he broke into a huge smile. "Maya, that's incredible. It's the recognition you've always deserved." She shook her head, the insecurity returning. "But what if I can't handle it? What if it's too big for me?" Daniel walked over to her, held her face with both hands and said with a firmness that left no room for doubt, "You've already proven you can handle it. You transformed an entire unit in months. You earned the respect of people who saw you as inferior. You faced prejudice, gossip, and insecurity, and you still kept going. If anyone is prepared for this, it's you." Maya closed her eyes, letting his words sink in. When she opened them again, there was determination there. "I'm going to accept. I'm going to do this." Daniel smiled, pulling her into a tight hug. "And I'll be by your side, always." They stayed like that for a few minutes, just feeling each other's presence, until Maya pulled away slightly and looked into his eyes. "Daniel, I need to tell you something. I love you, truly, with everything that means." His eyes widened, clearly not expecting that. Maya continued, her voice firm but emotional. "I spent so much time thinking I didn't deserve to be loved, that I didn't deserve to be happy, that I built huge walls around myself. But you knocked them all down. You made me believe I can be more, that I deserve more, and I love you for that. I love you for who you are, for what you make me be." Daniel said nothing. He just pulled her into a deep, intense kiss, loaded with everything words couldn't express. When they separated, he leaned his forehead against hers and whispered, "I love you too, Maya. Since the day I saw you in that meeting, trying to stay strong after everything you'd been through, you won me over without even trying, and I don't want anyone else but you." That night, Maya went home floating. She told everything to Mrs. Clara, who cried with joy and pride. "My child, I always knew you were special. I always knew God had big plans for you." Maya hugged her mother, feeling for the first time in a long time that everything made sense. The struggles, the defeats, the humiliations, everything had been necessary to get there. The following months were an avalanche of changes. Maya took over the regional coordination and plunged into work with a renewed passion. She visited all the units in the chain, talked to hundreds of employees, heard stories of struggle, of overcoming, of people who just needed a chance to show what they were capable of. She implemented active listening programs, created anonymous reporting channels for cases of abuse, and established clear promotion criteria based on merit rather than favoritism. The results appeared quickly. Employee turnover dropped drastically. Customer satisfaction rose, sales grew. But more important than the numbers was the atmosphere. The Thompson units began to be known not just for their prices, but for their treatment. Employees and customers felt they were seen, respected, and valued. Daniel continued by her side, now not just as a boyfriend, but as a life partner. They moved together into a larger apartment, where Mrs. Clara got a spacious, bright room. Her mother's health improved with the medications they could now buy without a struggle. Maya could finally give her the comfort she had always dreamed of. It was on one of those quiet afternoons, with Mrs. Clara watching a soap opera in the living room, that Maya and Daniel talked about the future. They were on the balcony, watching the sunset paint the Chicago sky in orange and pink. "Have you ever thought about getting married?" Daniel asked suddenly, point blank. Maya turned to him, surprised. "Married?" He smiled, taking her hand. "Married, making it official, building a family, all of that." Maya felt her heart race. "I think about it every day." Daniel pulled her closer. "Then marry me. Not now, not tomorrow, but when you're ready. I want to spend the rest of my life by your side. I want to wake up with you, sleep with you, face challenges with you, celebrate victories with you. I want it all, Maya." She felt the tears fall, but this time they were tears of pure happiness. "I want that too. I want all of it. With you." They kissed as the sun set, sealing a promise that went far beyond words. A few more months passed, and Maya was invited to speak at a business leadership event in New York City. It was her first time as a speaker, and the nervousness was real. But when she stepped onto the stage and saw hundreds of people looking at her, waiting to hear her story, something changed. She was no longer the invisible supermarket employee. She was no longer the humiliated woman who left with her head down. She was Maya Sterling, regional coordinator, agent of transformation, a living example that character matters more than position. She told her story without filters. She spoke of poverty, the struggle, the humiliation, but she also spoke of the choice she made that morning to help a child even knowing there could be consequences. She spoke of how that choice changed everything. How kindness isn't weakness, it's strength. How leading is serving, not dominating. How humanity is the greatest asset a company can have. When she finished, the audience stood up in applause. People approached afterward to thank her, to tell their own stories, to say they felt seen. Maya left that event with the certainty that she had found her purpose. It wasn't just working, it was transforming. It wasn't just surviving, it was inspiring. On a spring afternoon, a year after taking over the management, Maya was at the Western Avenue unit when Lily appeared with her grandfather. The girl was already bigger, more mature, but the smile was the same. "Maya!" The child ran and hugged Maya tightly. She returned the hug, feeling a wave of emotion. "Hi, Lily, how are you?" Lily pulled away, her eyes shining. "I'm good, and I came to thank you for everything. If it weren't for you, my grandpa would never have found out what was wrong. You changed everything." Robert Thompson approached, extending his hand to Maya. "She still surprises me every day, Maya. What you built here, what you're building in the entire company, is a legacy." Maya felt her chest tighten with gratitude. "You gave me the chance, Mr. Thompson. I only did what I thought was right." He shook his head. "No, you did much more than that. You proved that character beats politics, that humanity beats cruelty, that one person can indeed make a difference." That night, Maya was lying beside Daniel, listening to his peaceful breathing as he slept. She looked at the ceiling, replaying everything she had lived through in the last year. From humiliation to victory, from despair to hope, from loneliness to love. And she realized it had all started with a simple choice. The choice not to harden, not to lose her humanity even when the world tried to tear it away. She closed her eyes, feeling a deep peace. She knew challenges would still come, that life would never be perfect, that there would be difficult days. But now she had something she didn't have before. She had love. She had purpose. She had the certainty that whatever happened, she was strong enough to face it. And most importantly, she had the certainty that she deserved it. She deserved to be happy. She deserved to be loved. She deserved to occupy space. She deserved to dream. And nothing and no one would take that away from her ever again. Maya Sterling was no longer just a survivor. She was a winner. She was a leader. She was a woman who chose kindness in a cruel world and proved that this choice can change everything. And when she fell asleep that night, it was with a smile on her lips and her heart at peace, knowing that the best was yet to come. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Maya and Daniel has touched your heart. If you were moved by this journey of transformation, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments which moment marked you the most. Was it the unfair humiliation? The unexpected turnaround?